Hello everyone and welcome back to Ruby Lessons in Codecademy. So in the last lesson we started a new section of Ruby, which was, in the last video we were mainly talking about how Ruby can be very useful, and I was also comparing it to other languages, and we were learning about new tips and tricks that we could do to make our programming easier and faster. Today, by the looks of things, we're going to have something similar as well. So let's just get started. So we're going to be learning about conditional assignment. We've seen that we can use the equal to operator, single equal to operator, notice, to assign a value to a variable. But what if we only want to assign a variable if it hasn't already been assigned? So for example, you have a loop, or, okay, say you have a conditional, well, I don't really know how to explain it right now, but okay, I'm pretty sure that they're going to explain it. And hopefully give us situations. So this is the operator that we're going to be using, the pipe equal to. It's made up of the OR logical operator and the normal equal to assignment operator. So instructions, run the code in the editor. Here's what's happening. So let's first of all see what's going to happen without looking at what's going to happen, and then see whether we were correct. Favorite book equals nil. So in favorite book there is nothing. It's completely empty. We haven't assigned anything to it yet. Puts favorite book, so it prints out and it's going to give us nothing on the console because nil, or it might give us nil because Codecademy. Favorite book, so now we're saying if there is nothing in favorite book, then assign cat's cradle, and then it's going to put favorite book. Now, after we've done that, we're going to do, again, if there is nothing in favorite book, which in this case there actually will be something, because we have assigned cat's cradle into favorite book, it's going to have wise poignant guide to Ruby. And that's not going to be printed out, because we've already assigned it. But if there was, so say this wasn't actually here, then in that case we would actually get this as being printed out over here. But otherwise, what's going to be put on the console with this line is going to be cat's cradle, because it's conditional. If there is something already, it's not going to be assigned. Then we also have favorite book equals, and notice now it's equals, so it's not conditional, therefore we're forcing the assignment, and this is going to be put into favorite book. And when we see it on the console, that's going to be put out. So let's see if we were correct. Yes, we were. So we have cat nothing from that, cat's cradle from that, then cat's cradle from that again, and wise poignant guide to Ruby from that. So let's see what the instructions actually were, or in this case it's not really instructions, it's more of an explanation, but okay. Favorite book is set to nil, which is in Ruby for nothing, as we have discussed, I believe, 2 lessons ago. When you try to put it to the screen, you get exactly that, nothing. As you can see, this line is empty. Now our variable is conditionally set to cat's cradle. Since the value of the variable was nothing before, Ruby goes ahead and sets it so you can see cat's cradle printed out. So conditionally assigned because, well, it's empty before, and now we're saying if it is empty, do this. You could also do this exact same thing in something like if favorite book equals nil, favorite book equals cat's cradle. But as you can see, we can do 2 lines in 1 line, so why bother doing it in 2 lines? Another thing of why Ruby can be quite useful sometimes. We try conditional assignment again, this time with wise poignant guide to Ruby. The conditional assignment, that's this block of code. But wait, our variable already has a value, cat's cradle, so it stays set to the value, and that's what we see printed out over here. Finally, we use regular old assignment, so just equal to sign, to tell Ruby to reset favorite book to wise poignant guide to Ruby, which it gladly does. So, okay, now you try it. Looks like we are going to get an example. So create a variable favorite language. Okay. I think that I'm just going to copy and paste this, set it equal to, conditionally set it to your favorite programming language. And let's do C++ because it's quite a good programming language in my opinion. And we have conditionally set it to be equal to that. Well, because we are just doing it right now, it hasn't been set to anything before this. Therefore, it is going to get this value, because before this it didn't even exist. Therefore, we get C++ on our console from the put statement. However, if we already did have favorite, let's just paste it in because I already have it in my note clip. Or clipboard, not note clip. Favorite language equals, I don't know, let's do Python. If we already had it as that, then what's going to be printed out is Python. And for some reason it allows us to do this. It should pretty well. And if we get Python, because this is conditional assignment as we discussed before, now I'm just going to delete that and move on. Implicit return. We know that methods in Ruby can return values. Oh, actually, I want to get back to this slightly. So when might you use this? Well, as I said before, instead of writing out a whole if statement and assign it if it's nil, you can use it there. And in some cases, it might be useful. I can't think of one straight away, but if you think of one, do put it down in the comments. I will be grateful. But yeah, it's just something that Ruby gives you as an alternative to using 2 lines. You can just do 1 line. Implicit return. Okay, now let's move on. We know that methods in Ruby can return values, and we ask a method to return a value when we want to use it in another part of our program. So what if we don't want to put a return statement in our method definition though? So for instance, if you don't tell a JavaScript function exactly what to return, it will return undefined. For Python, the default return value is none. But for Ruby, it's something different. Ruby's methods will return the result of the last evaluated expression. So that means that you don't even have to write out the return in an example like this. So in this, this and this do the exact same thing. This returns a plus b, and this also returns a plus b because it's implicitly returning it. That's the last calculation it's done, and it's going to implicitly return that. And either way, when you call add 1 1, you'll get 2. Powerful stuff. So you can just puts it out, and you don't have to use a return. So modify the code in the editor to use an implicit return. Well, that's quite simple. We just delete the return because, well, this is the last calculation there is. Therefore, this should work. Good. And if we were to put multiple of 3, just to prove that this is still working, we get false because 5 is not evenly divisible by 3. If we were to put 6, we do that. And even though we don't have return, it is returned. However, if instead our last line was something like n plus 3, then that's going to be returned 9, as you can see, because that's the last calculation we have done. 6 plus 3 is 9. It implicitly returns that because we haven't told it to return. However, if you were to do return here now, well, this is completely going to be ignored because you're returning here, which means you're ending the method here, and you get true because 6 is a multiple of 3. So it really depends on what you want to do, for this case anyway. Yeah, that's all I can really say. If you forget to write a return statement in a case such as this, it's not a big deal because of the implicit return. And this is bugging me that it's not tab. Okay, so now that we have that, let's move on. Short circuit evaluation. So recall that we have the Boolean operators and, or, and not, maybe it should be here, but apparently we're just talking about and or, okay? The AND operator only returns true when the expressions on both sides of the operator are true. So if you have true and true, returns true. Any other case, so false and true, true and false will return false. So then we have or. However, the OR operator returns true when at least one of the sides is true. So if you have true or true, it's going to return true. True or false, false or true is going to also return true, but false or false is going to return false. So Ruby does this via short circuit evaluation. So that means that Ruby doesn't look at both expressions unless it has to. So if it sees false and true, it stops reading as soon as it sees the AND operator, because it knows false and anything must be false. So this makes Ruby, in this sense, quite efficient, because it doesn't even have to evaluate this side. So in this case, you might probably not be losing that much efficiency, but say this was a massive expression that checks whether something is true. If you are comparing a false expression to something that's true, you're still going to get false. So Ruby doesn't even have to evaluate this, which makes it that fraction of a second more efficient, which can sometimes be quite useful. So remember how Ruby returns the result of the last expression it evaluated. We can use that to show short circuit evaluation in action. If I can even pronounce my sh's correctly. Instructions. Check out the code in the editor, then click Save and Submit Code. Because only false and nil. Okay, so let's read the code first. We are defining a function or a method A and a method B. So we have in A, puts A was evaluated, return true. Okay, not doing anything special there. Define B, puts B was also evaluated, return true. Puts A or B, puts and then it's just going to put like a separating line just for aesthetics, and then we have A and B. Oh, okay, so I think I know where they're going with this. So if we run this, A was evaluated, true. A was evaluated, B was also evaluated. So as you can see in the first case, because we have the OR operator, because the first side was true, it didn't have to check what B was. It didn't have to check whether B was true or false. Because if one side is already true, there's no need to check the other side if you're using an OR operator. Which, as you can see, calling this would require calling a new method, which would make it slower. But because it's using the short circuit evaluation, it only needs to run one of the methods to check whether it's correct. So think about it, it should make sense. If it doesn't, do ask in the comments down below. So let's see what they have written here. So because only false and nil are false values in Ruby, both strings are treated as true. So Ruby knows true or anything else, so you can have true or true, true or false. They're both going to evaluate to true because you are using an OR operator. Therefore, it doesn't have to evaluate the second statement or the second value. So in A or B, it only evaluates A. Since it might encounter a false in the part B of A and B, however, it has to evaluate B, which we see in the result. However, just as something to add on to here, if you were to do return false here, now what's going to happen is, for this statement, both of them are going to be evaluated, but for the second one, only A is going to be evaluated. Let's see if that's correct. Yes, it is. So as you can see, A was evaluated, B was evaluated, and we get true from that. And it had to do that because it checked that this is false, and then it has to check whether the second one is also false, just to make sure that the statement is not going to be true. But in this case, it is going to be true, as you can see here. However, in the second case, because we made A to be false, false and true or false and false are both going to give a false. So it doesn't even have to check B. And yeah, so what else? Since it might encounter, it has to, which we see in the result. So that's short circuit evaluation and how things can be made more efficient. And this also, this is in some
Ruby does it. I'm not sure which other programming languages do it. But thinking to real life, let's apply it to real life. If you were going to evaluate these statements, and you had two massive statements to compare, and you had an AND operator in between, you realize that the first statement is false. There is no need to evaluate the second statement, just put the answer as being false. It saves you half the amount of time needed to evaluate. So things like this make life and even programming more efficient. Think about it. And yeah. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, as I mentioned before, please do feel free to ask in the comments down below. I will answer them as soon as possible. Other than that, if you enjoyed watching this video, then please give me a like, share, subscribe. And yeah, thanks so much for watching again, and goodbye.